In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, I have a fun topic for the day. And who else to talk about this topic other than Leif Thulin? And what I am going to do is I'm going to name three players that are projected as first-round picks by some sites. And I'm going to ask Leif, what is the difference between guys that are similar who aren't even on draft boards or not even as first-round picks? So stay tuned to hear Leif's thoughts on Dalton Knecht, Baylor Scheierman, Dillingham, Judah Mintz, Zach Edey, and even though he's not in this draft, Luka Garza. Stay tuned. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, the director of scouting for NBA Big Board and the founder of NBA Draft Junkies. And before I get too deep in this episode, I want to let you know that it is brought to you by LinkedIn, because LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates that you want to talk to, but they help you get to them faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That is linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please subscribe, like, share, comment, give us a rating, and make sure that you click the bell where you can get notified every time we drop a podcast, because we are your daily source for NBA draft content. It's been a minute, Leif. It's been a little while since we did a show together, and you were the perfect guy for this topic. So I want to get right into it. So Dalton Knecht is getting lottery love, and I mean, deservedly so. I mean, he's averaging like 20 points a game. He's had about 6 games or 30 or more. He's efficient from the floor. He deserves all of the love that he is getting, without a doubt, playing in the SEC. But Baylor Scheierman has had some really good games lately. You can't use the age as a factor of why there's a big difference between them, but I've seen Knecht in the lottery, and I've seen Baylor as a guy that is not even on some guys' top 50 prospects. And I can make a case, and I have my opinion about it, but I wanted to get yours. You can make a case and say Scheierman is the better shooter, even though the numbers don't. I mean, the numbers are give or take, but Scheierman's the better passer, the better rebounder, playmaker. You can say defensively, they're, they both have their concerns there. But in your opinion, why is there such a huge gap between the two as far as like mainstream draft boards?
Well, the first thing to address is I think the gap isn't that big in terms of numbers, both in terms of productivity, which is where everyone's has this misconception.
Yep.
Like Baylor Scheierman scoring 19 points, 9 rebounds in the Big East on a team that's going to be a top 3 seed. Dalton Knecht's got a few more points, fewer rebounds, fewer assists on a team that's probably going to be a 1 seed. Like, those aren't different ballpark, different world type of things. I also think that on my personal big board that Baylor Scheierman and Dalton Knecht are probably going to end up pretty close together, just because I've been very high on Scheierman. And when you sent me this topic, I was like, oh, this is perfect, because I made this comparison for those of you everydayers. You probably heard this with Richard last week, that in a different world, you could see these players play a similar role in the NBA, but be drafted for completely different reasons. And there's a way that Scheierman's better. And I had this conversation with a scout about a month or two ago. So here's my logic, and this is a convoluted way of saying the reason they're viewed differently is because one is more new. Knecht came out of nowhere. He came from Northern Colorado, grew late, scored 20 his senior year at Northern Colorado, and now at the SEC plays dominant, and he's doing it in more of an isolation way. Scheierman's doing it as a role player starring in his role. And I think more people like the fact that, Knecht has this capacity to be a star in college basketball, the all bucket getter type. Like last year, there was Brandon Miller was the best bucket getter in college basketball. This year, it's Dalton Knecht. But in the NBA, I think both are going to play a similar role as an off-ball guy who's a movement shooter, who can rebound and be someone who adds value offensively more than defensively. And I think Scheierman is a better shooter than Knecht personally.
Okay. So, I'm from Omaha. So, I talk to a lot of Creighton fans. And one of the I guess knocks, and it's just very little. Was he came into Creighton shooting? I think he shot like 46% that last year at South Dakota State. So they were expecting a guy that's going to shoot, at least in the 40s. I want to say he's in the high 30s, and he was around that last year. And I think the biggest difference is that, like you said, that Knecht is new. Like he's like the flavor of the month. And in draft circles, that's really, really important. But to me, it's crazy because you look at the Big East, it's a strong conference. I mean, the defending national champion is in the Big East. The SEC is, you can make cases say the SEC is the strongest conference. Now, Knecht is playing about 6 more minutes, 5 or 6 minutes less per game on a better team. But still, I don't understand why there is like a 30 or 40 prospect gap between them, even more in draft circles.
Yeah, I mean, you're preaching to the choir there. I think on January 1st or 2nd, we did an episode where I talked about Baylor Scheierman being a first round pick, someone I thought would end up in my top 20, and that's where he is right now for me. I said last week with Richard that I had Knecht in my lottery, so that they're pretty close. I think the part that would be philosophical that's dependent for teams would be, do you value a player that you think right away can give you more? Because that's kind of been a trend recently. And so these older players become more and more coveted. Like Jaime Jaquez comes in, he's able to contribute on a team that's a playoff team. So that would be the archetype you'd want to follow. And is Knecht more ready to be this off-ball specialist role, or is Scheierman more ready because he's been in that role more frequently? And I actually think there's a chance that the 3-and-D role behooves Scheierman better than Knecht, but there's a chance that Knecht turns into this movement shooter, for lack of a better example, like Duncan Robinson right now, where he's running off screens and knocking down threes. I think Scheierman's more of a set shot shooter who has the capacity to move a little bit, but he's got more game as a creator for others, and he's a better rebounder. And I think Scheierman's an underrated defender. Like, I think there's stereotypes that make him seem like a bad defender, but if you watch him play, he's pretty rugged. He's physically strong, and he's tenacious as a rebounder. So it gives you added value. And I think there's a real way that as a 3-and-D, he could be better. But if you put more emphasis into scoring, the one who has a higher scoring potential to me is Dalton Knecht.
Do you think the athleticism is part of the big gap?
I don't think that Knecht's that much better of an athlete. I think he's more explosive. He's a 1-foot jumper, and he gets off the ground fast. But it's not like you watch them play, and like defense is typically where I think athleticism is most like prevalent. You can see when a person moves faster, that they've got quicker twitch, that they can deflect balls and run over ball screens. I think that Scheierman has this kind of like rugged, girthy way of playing defense that's better than Knecht, even though Knecht's a better jumper, and I think he's a little quicker. Like, Knecht's hidden on defense. Like, he went to Tennessee initially to learn how to play defense. That's at least what everyone was told. But right now, the deal he's made with Rick Barnes is, I'm going to score you 20 plus. The rest of the team's going to defend. You hide me enough so that I'm fresh enough to score 20 and be good at the end of the game, and we can be a 1 seed. Like, that's really the deal he's made. Scheierman, I feel like, is a more complete, like, every game workhorse than Knecht. But like, I think you're splitting hairs athletically, honestly. I think Knecht's just a better jumper.
Yeah, and I mean he's had some highlight reel athletic plays that I think kind of like make people think that he is a much, much, much better athlete. All right, when we return, this will be a fun one. I want to hear Leif's thoughts on why Rob Dillingham is getting top 5 love, top 10, and why Judah Mintz, whose measurables are similar and is putting up really good numbers, is not on a lot of first round or even second round draft boards. Stay tuned. All right, before we get into that debate, let's talk about our partners at eBay, because our partners at eBay have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you are prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you with players that are guaranteed to fit your roster. So let's see who Josh has picked out for this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. First, it is Kyle Anderson. And with Karl Anthony Towns, his future uncertain, Anderson is going to see a larger role and will likely start. So just beware that the Wolves play only 2 games next week. And then there's Kel'el. He just signed a new extension, and he has been the Raptors starting center, and you know how good he can be. And then there's Kyle Lowry. With D'Anthony Melton out, Nick Nurse has been leaning on one of the old veterans, and we knew Lowry was going to play a big role once he got to Philly. So Kyle Lowry, Kelly Olynyk, and Kyle Anderson are 3 of the picks that Josh Lloyd has picked out for you to help you win your fantasy basketball championship. And eBay Motors knows a thing or two about championships and how a championship team is built off of each player being a good fit, which is the same with your vehicle. They have over 122 million parts for your car, and you can make sure that your car stays running smoothly or looking good. They have brake lights, LED lights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your car needs, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. And plus, with the prices, you will be burning rubber, not cash. So keep your car looking fresh at ebaymotors.com. And the eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available for U.S. customers, eligible items only, and exclusions apply. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week streaming channel on YouTube, and it is now available on Amazon Fire TV and the Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts from Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every league. So find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app on Amazon. All right, second segment. This one is going to be fun. Rob Dillingham is one of my personal favorite players in this draft. I think he's the most electrifying and exciting player in this class. Whenever he has the ball in his hands, it's like most must-see TV for me. That's a lot of words that I'm trying to rhyme. But Judah Mintz is having a really good year. He's listed at about 6'4", 185. So the measurements between him and Dillingham aren't that far apart. Judah is a year older. He's averaging 18.7 points, 4.5 assists. He's shooting 44% from the floor. He's ranked in the top 5 in the ACC in scoring and assists. Why is there such a huge gap between Dillingham and Judah Mintz?
Well, the first reason that I think the gap is as big as it is, even though I think Judah should be higher on boards, is that Judah doesn't shoot very well. He shoots 29% and people are sagging off him. Rob Dillingham shoots 44% on shots that are probably not good shots. Like he is, and those are threes. Like Rob Dillingham, if he just kind of set his feet and jumped into shots, could be shooting ridiculous numbers. But he shoots them on tough ones. He shoots them from crazy distance. So the difference is shooting. I also think that Rob Dillingham is better at creating for others and using when he has the ball, that's a win. Like he doesn't always have the ball for Kentucky. He's come off the bench. He's had roles shift in front of him with himself and other players. Whereas Judah Mintz always has the ball, has the ability to create for others, and it's like on his shoulders the whole time, which is good and bad, but it allows for him to be a creator often. I think Dillingham's a better creator than you even see because he's not given the ball in that exclusive role of, hey, I am the point guard of Kentucky that a lot of the previous ones have had. Like we saw De'Aaron Fox go downhill and be like, oh, wow, that guy's a great point guard. We saw John Wall. I mean, I could go on and on about guards from Kentucky that have had this, it's your team. He hasn't had that, and he's still got that electrifying way about him that some of those previous guards have had while shooting 44% from three, while being able to get anywhere he wants. Imagine NBA spacing. I think it only gets better. And Kentucky shoots it really well, so there is spacing, and I'll concede that. But I think if you give more spacing and more freedom to a guy like Rob Dillingham, you're seeing the creativity that's pretty rare. And I'm not quite ready to say he's like got that Trae Young ability, but he's somewhere in that mold where you say, even if he's not good defensively, you're willing to build your team around his traits.
All right, let me play devil's advocate here. Let's say their roles were reversed and Mintz had a smaller role on a Kentucky team that was surrounded with guys that are going to play in the NBA. And Dillingham had a higher usage at Syracuse. Do you think that Dillingham's efficiency would be similar to where Mintz is right now?
I think he would score more points per game and he'd shoot better percentages, but his percentages, he'd shoot better percentages than Mintz, that is. They would be worse than they are currently in terms of shooting splits, but I think he'd score more than Judah does for Syracuse. And I think he would shoot a better percentage than Judah does. I just think he's got this like electric quick step where he's able to get places he wants. And Mintz has unbelievable speed, but you know what's coming. The thing about Dillingham that's crazy is he's unpredictable even for himself. Like he'll go left to right in a split second and shoot a fadeaway 18-footer, and then the next time he'll blow by and get to the rim and throw an alley oop. And it's something that it works because Kentucky's got those a number of options. And I understand the point is, okay, is it just because he's got a smaller role? But it's not like when he's in, his role is small. Like he is the creator. So I just buy his shot. And even though he's like shooting difficult shots, his shooting 44%. So I think he's just a significantly better shooter.
Yeah, and I think his field goal percentage, at least from three, has probably been the biggest surprise. We all knew coming into the season that he was like this uber confident shot maker that had questionable shot selection. And like you said, to see him shoot this efficiently with that shot selection has probably been, probably the biggest surprise other than how well he's playing. As far as Mintz, where do you have him on your board? And do you think his lack of 3-point shooting as a point guard is what's really like hurting him right now?
Yeah, I haven't fully fledged out my board yet, but I think he'll be in the first little bit of the second round, so probably 30 through 40. And that is the issue. I think if Judah Mintz were shooting 33% as opposed to 29, that there would be some optimism. But the more alarming part is you watch Syracuse play, and I watched a lot of them early in the year, a little less more recently, but teams would know Judah Mintz was the offense, and they would still sag off of him. Like
Yep.
he's so fast that he can still get to the rim, which is impressive, but they're not scared of him shooting. They're picking up at 17 feet, whereas Dillingham's being picked up at 26.
Yeah. And he's a reluctant shooter, only shooting like two threes per game. But he's one of the rare guards that is like his free throw attempts per game is almost four times his 3-point attempts per game. He's getting to the line 8 times per game. And I think with NBA spacing, I think that's value of a guy that can get to the line. And even if he's having an off shooting night, you know that he is going to aggressively attack the rim, maybe even get your team, extra free throws because he's getting them in the bonus early. Do you think if, let's say, Mintz enters the draft and goes to the combine, and let's say he shoots it well in the pre-draft process, do you think he can creep up into that first round range?
I'm gonna say it's possible just because look, 19 points a game for an ACC team, and he's got the traits where he's speedy and he's bigger for a guard in terms of length. He competes. It's doable, but I think it's gonna be hard to tell scouts, hey, I'm a good shooter when you shot 29% and only shoot two a game. It's not like he's shot poorly, but he for a long time has shot well and has that capacity. He's never been a very good shooter, so I think it's hard to outright that reputation.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Isaiah Collier, even though he's bigger, is going to go higher, and we have huge question marks about his shooting. We have major question marks about Ron Holland's shooting, even though Holland is younger, but he's projected to go high. I mean, I think there's several guys, Stefan Castle. And so, I mean, to me, it seems like it's all boiling down to their size. Do you think that is also an issue?
I mean, yeah, it's an imperfect prospect, especially where shooting is becoming more and more prevalent. I had a conversation recently with a guy in the NBA about some of these players that are good in college because they impact many facets of the game don't do that in the NBA because they don't get an opportunity to be on the court because they can't shoot. And unless they're such a good player as a creator, that right away they're given the keys to the engine, they're not terribly impactful in their first year or two. So I think shooting is something that is hard to outrun more so than even size at this rate because Dillingham's tiny. Like I know we talked about it, he's got like long arms and he's quick as a cat, but he's small, so deficient. Like you're going to be deficient defensively if you have him, but you're going to be so good offensively if he pans out that it's worth that risk. Now, if you flip the script, if you've got Castle, for instance, he's big. That's his main appeal. He's a shot away from being one of the top guys in this class, like hands down, because he's got all these different things. Same with Collier, in a different, they're a little different, but you get my point. Is how quickly can you play a player if he's going to shoot sub 30% or 30% from three? And I think it becomes more and more about a philosophy of the NBA changing more so than college basketball saying, oh, this guy's not as good. It's just that the NBA is prioritizing 3-point shooting and ability to space the floor more than some of the other things that these players do well.
Yep, that's fair. I talked to a scout. He loved Judah Mintz, and he thought he was the best offensive player in the ACC as far as just being difficult to stop. And but he had some concerns a little bit about his size, and he was more so saying from the lines of there are some trainers that say, hey, if you got a small guard that's defending you with the NBA rules, just run them over. Just like run right through them because you're going to, you're going to get the fouls and then you can just use your strength to play bully ball. All right. When we return, the last segment is going to be fun. It's going to be controversial. I know some people are going to have their thoughts and opinions on it, but we're going to talk about Zach Edey and why he is getting some first round buzz and one publication has him in the lottery, but why Luka Garza did not get the same benefit of the doubt, even though he's a little bit smaller, but you can make a case and say Luka Garza was just as good, but even more well-rounded as an offensive player than Zach Edey. But before we get into that fun topic, let's talk about LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is our title sponsor for today. And when you are hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are the right fit, the right roles, just like your NBA team. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn is not just another job board. It is a place that has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else, and LinkedIn does all of this while making the process easy and intuitive, and hiring is a lot easier when you have a deep pool of quality candidates. So in fact, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. And LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing many hats and they may not have the time or even the resources to hire. And that's why LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even have launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses are using LinkedIn for hiring, so you could be next. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That is linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, this last segment, Zach Edey. We've talked about Zach before. I read some of the comments. There are some people that really think like Zach is unstoppable, and they talk about his stats and his size, and nobody's going to guard him. And then there are people that are just like, this guy is a great college player. His game doesn't necessarily fit the NBA. I'm more so leaning towards, maybe if I'm a team in the late first round, I need some size, and I figure like, I'm going to have to go against Jokic to get out the West, then I would take a chance on him. I'm not using a lottery pick on him because as good as he is, I don't see a team that's going to like change their offense to like cater to his strengths. And I know you talked about the pace being an issue for, and in your opinion, being an issue for him in the NBA. So the reason I brought up Luka Garza is because Garza was a dominant college player. I know he won like Player of the Year back-to-back years with the Sporting News, but I don't think it was like the official Player of the Year award. Luka Garza was inside, outside. He rebounded. His game was more well-rounded than Zach Edey, not as big. And I even like did the research. Like I want to say like on post ups, their percentages weren't that far apart on just like pure low post touches. But Luka Garza was like a late second round pick. He has pretty much been in the G League or, in street clothes in the NBA. Why is Luka Garza where he's at? And some people believe that Zach Edey is a lottery pick, in your opinion. What is the reason behind it?
Well, I think there's a lot more faith. It's unproven yet that Edey will be a good NBA defender. Like there's faith that he can defend the rim at a level that makes it acceptable to have him and then build your offense. And like you said, you don't have to cater around a player like if you were to take him the lottery. But if he's going to go 20 to 25, for instance, and you can play those minutes and you can have someone protect the rim with the sheer size that Zach Edey has, there's a lot more optimism that defensively he'll be passable. Whereas Luka Garza, even at Iowa, was horrendous defensively. Like Luka Garza, I think was more skilled than Edey. Actually, he was smaller, but he was just as good in the post in terms of their percentages because he had more moves that he could go to. Edey can just move people and get to that jump hook, and he doesn't need to do anything different. I'm not using that as a critique at all. I'm just saying that's the reason they're similar is because they played different ways down when on the block. I think Garza is a far better shooter. He's actually become a very good shooter. I've seen him play a few G League games, and he doesn't miss,
Yep.
especially when he's warming up. He's a great shooter. Edey's a reluctant 3-point shooter, and it's like it's almost a joke when he takes it, and his team all smiles and grins and but that's not once again that's not a criticism of Edey. It's just what he does well. He does so well that you don't need to deviate from it. The difference as prospects is defense to me. I don't think that Garza could ever be a passable defender because he lacks the length to protect the rim and he lacks the speed to switch. Edey can protect the rim at a high level just because of sheer size.
I mean, in my opinion, I think he can protect the rim due to his size, but as soon as you put him in the game, you're going to put in a guy that's going to space the floor to get him out and away from the rim. And I think his size will be more of a disadvantage than advantage in the NBA. What is your thoughts on that?
I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think it's hard to envision it without knowing which team and exactly like the rotation he plays in. So I think I mostly agree. I have like a tiny bit of skepticism, but I think I agree with you actually.
Yeah, I just think it's going to be a situation where he may end up being like this wild card to where okay, we're gonna pound the ball into him for a few minutes a game on the second unit. And then I think the team is going to counter with, okay, we're going to bring in a pick and pop big, or we're going to bring in somebody that's just going to beat him down the floor. And we want the team to basically go against their offense and force feed him the ball. And then it kind of throws them off track. So I think he's going to be like this at best. I think like this wild card that teams throw in from here and there to kind of, mix up the game. I just can't see him being someone that plays 15 to 20 minutes a night. That's just my opinion. But
I
I've seen
agree
him in the
with that.
lottery. Like to me,
Yeah.
it only takes one team. But I mean, I didn't think that. What's the guy's name? I know this is going to be a sore spot with Jazz fans. I keep wanting to call him
Oh,
Kalana
no,
Azubuike, but it's
it's
not
a
Kalana.
Toka Azubuike, the
Yeah.
27th pick. This is just gonna pain me.
I mean, he's in Phoenix now, and I didn't even know that till I went to a Mavs game, and I was kind of like in the back hallway, and he walked by me, and in the first person I thought it was you and David Locke, but I didn't think that he was gonna go first round, and Edey has a better chance of going first round than he does. So I have another question for you. Hunter Dickinson is probably not going to get drafted. In your opinion, why does Hunter Dickinson not get drafted and Zach Edey could be a first round pick?
Because it's similar with Garza. I think Edey's sheer size allows him for people to believe he can be a good defensive center. And Dickinson's just got years and years of film of him being a terrible defensive center. He can
Terrible.
step out and yeah, terrible, terrible. He can step out and shoot it pretty well. He's a skilled passer. He's big, don't get me wrong, but he doesn't leave the ground. Edey doesn't need to leave the ground. He still influences the shot. He's also a more fluid athlete than Dickinson is. And I say this like I don't know where he is on my board, but I wouldn't take him unless I already have a lot of pieces in place. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe we can afford to take this gamble and tinker, and maybe we can throw a curveball for 10 to 15 minutes a night if it works out, like you said. So I'm in the vein that I would take him no sooner than the late 20s. And even then, I don't think I'll have him that high on my board, just because the pace of the NBA is only getting faster,
Yeah.
and Purdue moves at a high pace in terms of their offense, but their actual time until getting a shot's not very fast. And they can control the tempo because they play through him. They get a ton of offensive rebounds, so you don't have to race up and down if they're missing those threes. I think the pace is going to be really hard, and I know he's just going to play in spurts. It's not like college basketball where he plays a ton. But if you're playing in spurts, you don't have the same ability to like dominate a game by wearing down a player either. So I have my reservations.
All right, if you had to think of a team, and this is just putting you on the hot seat here, a team that you think would be somewhat of a good fit that can take that risk. Name some teams that, like, just the first teams that come to mind.
The team that comes to my mind, strangely enough, is the Clippers. I can see him in like an Ivica Zubac light role, and obviously he's bigger than Zubac, but he can be someone who takes up space, a pick and roll threat with good hands, and just eats up rebounds in a second unit. That's the first team that came to my mind, but I haven't really thought of it deeply.
Yeah, for me, it would be like the Suns, just because they could probably just use another big body. And you figure even like this year, I just imagine if the Suns want to get out the West, they got to beat a Denver. And I think Edey's the guy again. Just throw him in there for a few minutes per game. And even if, like, I mean, who's the Suns backup? I mean, the
Eubanks.
Nuggets backup five right now. It's
Zeke
DeAndre
Naji.
or no,
Yeah, Zeke
Najee.
Naji.
I think if it's Najee, then you say, okay, we can throw a guy like Edey in and just, run a few possessions. But I think it's going to have to be like a playoff team that just kind of uses them as a wild card, which is why the lottery discussions seem really, really weird to me. Like, what lottery team? Unless it's somebody like the Thunder, for example, they're like, we need some size, but I don't think he fits what they're trying to do.
I mean, they play lightning fast. That'd be a difficult one.
Right. Well, that wraps up this episode. Once again, it's Rafael with Leif, Thulin, and we are out of here.